What are the Judeo-Christian values that people talk about all the time? The term Judeo-Christian values is relatively new. It's from the 20th century. But the premise that we are a nation that is based on the Hebrew Bible is something that dates back all the way to the founders. That's something that they talk about in their writings, a Bible-based society. It doesn't mean a theocracy or anything like that, but that the foundation, the culture that has been created is essentially based on biblical morality. But check out this clip from Ben Shapiro, where I guess a student at one of his talks gets very upset about the idea of calling it Judeo-Christian values if Judaism and Christianity are so theologically different. And he intertwines that with some of the old misquotes from the Talmud that are said to be about Christians or about Jesus, which are not. They're all out of context things, and I hope to do a video kind of going through those in the near future. But in the meanwhile, check out Ben Shapiro's response, and then we can go through what Judeo-Christian values really actually are.
Good evening, Mr. Shapiro. You have consistently promoted the idea that America was built on Judeo-Christian values. However, as a devout Christian, I have difficulty accepting the term given Judaism's rejection of Jesus. Christians believe Jesus Christ is God. In contrast, the Talmud, a central Jewish holy book, teaches that Jesus is burning in hellfire and excrement. And while the New Testament tells us to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us, Sovereign 15 of the Talmud states that even the best of the Gentiles should be killed. Given these irreconcilable differences, why do you insist on using this oxymoronic term?
Okay, so first of all, that's a really bad read of the Talmud. Second of all, the notion that you can cite any text in support of the idea that Judaism broad writ is somehow disdainful or hateful of Christians or of people who are not Jewish is in fact a tremendous misread of Judaism over the centuries and particularly today. I can cite sections in the New Testament that I find personally problematic. I can certainly cite segments in the Quran that I find personally problematic. The truth is I could probably find places in the Old Testament that I find personally problematic. That does not speak to what Judaism is and its historic impact on the world. Judaism is the foundation of Christianity. Jesus himself acknowledged this. The New Testament acknowledges this. The notion that Judaism and Christianity are somehow completely delinked and teach two completely separate lessons ignores the fact that the Old Testament is part and parcel of the New Testament. Sure, Christians and Jews think different things. Of course. Otherwise, I'd be a Christian or you'd be a Jew. If we thought completely the same thing, then presumably we would have the exact same religion. But the notion that Judaism and Christianity are completely delinked is wrong. Citations from the Talmud, or even citations of texts that are written in the year 500 CE at a time when Jews were being persecuted by Christians in the Roman Empire, that seems to me a real stretch to get to the idea that Jews today are overall hateful of Christians. I'm not sure that there's anybody in America, personally speaking, who's pushed more people back to church than me. I really don't know that there is anybody who's done that. I tell Christians literally all the time to go to church. I tell Christians all the time to re-engage with their faith. I think it is deeply, deeply important that they do. I don't try to convert people to Judaism because that's actually forbidden in Jewish law. I'm not supposed to convert people to Judaism. So I know there's a group of people who spend all day online cherry-picking bad lines from the Talmud, a text that they have no familiarity with, and then trying to spin that into a giant myth about how Jews are seeking the extermination of Christians or some other bizarre conspiracy theory. It's a lie, it's stupid, and the Judeo-Christian values of the nation are quite real because, once again, Judaism and Christianity have an awful lot in common.
I think that's absolutely correct. And these misquotes from the Talmud have been rehashed and rehashed in different contexts over the centuries. Again, that's something that there's plenty of information available on to get in context stuff. But this idea to sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater and say because we have different theological differences that we can't be rooted in the same value. So I did want to play this clip from Dennis Prager explaining, in his view, what the Judeo-Christian values are. So for our viewers, it can become eminently clear what exactly it is that we're talking about. Take a look.
You ever heard the term Judeo-Christian values? I suspect you have. Can you name any of those values? I suspect. But you should, because Judeo-Christian values are the moral foundation of Western civilization. As the great British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher put it, the truths of the Judeo-Christian tradition are infinitely precious, not only because they are true, but also because they provide the moral impulse which alone can lead to that peace for which we all long. Mrs. Thatcher was a believing Christian. I am a believing Jew. While we have different theologies, we have the same core values. And as far as society is concerned, moral values are far more important than theologies. That is why traditionally religious Protestants, Catholics, Mormons, and Jews are aligned on almost every important moral issue. Here, then, are 10 of those values. Number 1, there is one God. That God is the God introduced to the world by the Hebrew Bible, or as Christians came to refer to it, the Old Testament. Number 2, the Hebrew Bible introduced the most revolutionary moral idea in history, that there are objective moral truths, just as there are objective mathematical and scientific truths. Without God, there is no moral truth, only moral opinions. Number 3, because there are moral truths, good and evil are the same for all people. Number 4, God, not man, not government, not popular opinion, not a democratic vote, is the source of our rights. The American Declaration of Independence declares that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Number 5, the human being is created in the image of God. Therefore, every human life is precious, and therefore race is of no significance because God has no race. Number 6, the world is based on divine order, and order is made by distinctions. Among these divine distinctions are God and man, God and nature, man and woman, human and animal, good and evil. Number 7, man is not basically good. Christians speak of original sin in referring to man's nature. Jews cite what God said in Genesis, the will of man's heart is evil from his youth. Both beliefs are diametrically opposed to the naive modern belief that man is basically good. And they lead to the same conclusion. We need God-based rules to keep us from our natural inclinations. Number 8, therefore, our natural inclinations are a very poor moral guide. As religious Jews and Christians put it, don't follow your heart. A lot of terrible things have been done and are being done now by people thinking their hearts are better guides than Judeo-Christian values. Number 9, human beings have free will and are therefore responsible for how they behave. In the secular world, free will does not exist because all human behavior is the result of biology and environment. And if there is no free will, people are not responsible for what they do, good or bad. Number 10, the 10 Commandments. They are the core of Judeo-Christian values. In fact, if everyone lived just by the 10 Commandments, we wouldn't need armies or even police. There's another important aspect to the term Judeo-Christian. The two religions need each other. Without the Old Testament, there is no New Testament. Virtually every Christian moral principle derives from the Hebrew Bible. Not only the 10 Judeo-Christian values I just enumerated, but such basic moral principles as love your neighbor as yourself, love the Lord your God, and love the stranger. At the same time, Jews need Christians. It was overwhelmingly Christians who carried knowledge of the Hebrew Bible to the world. Judeo-Christian refers to one other fact. No religions in the world share a common revelation the way Judaism and Christianity do. That common revelation is the Hebrew Bible. The only two religions that share that Bible, or any sacred work, are Judaism and Christianity. The ultimate embodiment of Judeo-Christian values has been the United States of America. America's founders were Christians, some culturally, some theologically, who were rooted in the Old Testament. So much so that Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin designed a seal for the United States that depicted God leading Israel out of Egypt, just as they believed God was leading America out of Europe. Only if we keep these values will we keep America, and for that matter, Western civilization. I'm Dennis Prager.
So that's, again, absolutely right. I think people get thrown off by the term Judeo-Christian because Judeo and Christian are theologies. And so being that there is a theological contrast, they don't share everything in their theology, that people are confused by the word. I think maybe a better term would be Hebrew Bible values, which is even our founders were premised in the Hebrew Bible. And the reason being is because it's the Hebrew Bible, not the Gospels, that provide a framework for creating a society. It's a law book, right? Predominantly, the Hebrew Bible is predominantly, especially the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses are a law book about building a civilization, how that's supposed to look. The Gospels are not focused on creating a law, but I think that's more semantics and terms rather than the essence of what's being said. That the values in which we're talking about over here, in which we're unified, in which our founders established this country on, is this Hebrew Bible values, this tradition that is based on biblical principle about setting up a moral and good civilization based on the recognition of God as overseeing it all. If you like this content in general, I highly suggest that you hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch with you. Have a wonderful day.